Good morning. Today is May 5th, a Tuesday in the year 2020. Today we are going to finish up the third account in Genesis and begin the fourth, the account of Noah. Last time we looked at the genealogies and the story of Cain and Abel, comparing the tension between the line of Seth and the line of Cain. That discussion is important for some of the things we will be talking about today. So, let's begin. When men began to increase, this is chapter 6, verse 1. When men began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. When the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. The Lord said, I will wipe mankind whom I have created from the face of the earth, men and animals and creatures that move along the ground and birds of the air, for I am grieved that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This ends the third account in Genesis with a really fascinating passage that has generated no end of not only theological speculation, but storytelling. We have the days before the flood, and the population is growing, and we have two groups here in question: the sons of God and the daughters of men. There are a couple of possible explanations here within the context of the Old Testament. First, the sons of God, B'nai Elohim, may refer to angelic beings who are members of God's court, who might be the us and let us go down. The second possibility are the descendants in the line of Seth, the godly men of the world. That would be consistent with the placement near the genealogies, particularly the placement near the genealogy of Seth, in which case the daughters of men would be the descendants of Cain. It's not clear. Nor perhaps is it particularly relevant to the point of the story, but it is interesting. In either case, the product of these mergings are Nephilim. And what Nephilim means will be attested to by various experts, but if they're being honest, they don't really know. It might mean the fallen ones, if related to the Hebrew word Nephal. It may mean the living ones, if related to the word Nephish. Later, the term will be used for giants. That language is not necessarily here. Mighty ones is another possibility. Men of renown, powerful people. But their nature, if they are men of renown and mighty, the heroes of old, is that they are violent. And it is a world that is categorized by violence that leads God to his next decisions. Now, I like the language here in the NIV. The Lord was grieved. Not that he regretted, not that he thought he had made a bad idea, he had made a bad decision, but that it hurt that humanity was like this. And so he decides to start over. The cause of the flood is not that the sons of man married the daughters of Eve. This is not an effort to wipe them out, the Nephilim, because the Nephilim appear later. The purpose of the flood is to wipe out humanity's violent nature. I know, not particularly successful, but that is the explanation we are given here. This will be important when we get to the end of the flood narrative and we see some of the first commands God gives Noah. This whole section is reinforcing the value of the image of God from chapter 1. It is this image in humanity that makes humans valuable, important. And it is the violation of this image that causes us to be judged as wicked, as evil. And so, we now move into the account of Noah. Verse 9, this is the account of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. He walked with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The last person, of course, that walked with God, that we are told that specifically, is Enoch in chapter 5, who walked with God, and then he was not, for God took him. Something different is planned here for Noah. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people of earth was corrupt in their ways. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. And by the way, the NIV provides a modern translation of these measurements. In the original, they are cubits, and ancient cubits varied by time and place. So these are best guesses. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Make a roof for it and finish the ark within 18 inches of the top. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, of every living... Sorry. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to make every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Now, there's details here, but as we're going to see in a minute, some of those details change. in different versions. So we are faced with the question of the reality of the Great Flood and what the ark might have been and what Noah might have been, and are these historical accounts. When I began this study, I told you that we are looking for theological truths. The historicity, the factualness of these accounts is honestly less than relative. But you're denying the Bible. No, I'm not. I am valuing Scripture for what it teaches. This is a story that is related for a purpose. The purpose is to show that God again is gracious even in his punishment. He does not destroy everything, but he protects a small part. That is a theme that is carried out not only through the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, but through the whole Old Testament and even into the New. That while the majority might reject God, there is always a small part that is loyal to God and that he protects and that he keeps. We do not need to base our understanding of how the world works on this story, because that is not his purpose. There have been many disasters, even in human history, ice ages and floods. And it is God's protection that is important in this story. I think when we ignore the brains God gave us, when we ignore the evidence of our eyes and our reason, we make a mistake. We understand that we are flawed creatures and that our observations and conclusions might be wrong. But that is no reason to reject them out of hand. We do damage to ourselves and our faith and our society when we are insistent on stories that are intended to talk to us about morality and the nature of God and demand that they be taken as scientific evidence. The two trains of thought need not be mutually exclusive. Let us continue with chapter 7. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into your ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, 2 of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive through the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made, except, of course, for the fish and presumably amphibians to some degree." Notice that this is immediately contradictory. So we're left with a question. Do we have 2 different stories that the editor of this material is trying to combine? Possibly. Is there some other way we are supposed to understand this? Possibly. it is likely, first of all, well, before we get to that, first of all, the idea of clean and unclean has not shown up in the previous 6 chapters. And it won't show up for quite a long time. Not at all in Genesis. This idea of clean and unclean is a very late idea and is kind of inserted into the text here, which makes it odd. Now, so what did Noah take on the ark? 2 of every kind, says chapter 6. 7 of every kind, says chapter 7. Now, is that 7 pairs, or is it 3 pairs and an extra of the clean ones, and 2 of the unclean ones? I don't know. I think practically 3 pair and an extra intended for sacrifice when this is all over makes sense. But it's not clear. We don't know. It's an amazing thing to say when you look at Scripture. We don't know. But it is far more honest than a lot of the assertions of certainty that people will give. The 40 days and 40 nights is an interesting thing. Anytime the Bible talks about 40 of something, 40 days and nights, 40 years, it is the amount of time it takes for God to accomplish what he wanted. It is a symbolic number, just like 7 is a symbolic number. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and all the creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days of the flood waters came on the earth. The 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day all the springs of the deep burst forth, and floodgates of the heavens were opened. Rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of the 3 sons, entered the ark. This is very repetitive. But think about it not as written word, but as spoken word, where repetition is important, where this hammering 3 times of, and they got on the ark, helps to burn it into memory. It all repeats. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, every bird according to its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah, and the Lord shut him in. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and the waters increased and lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth. The ark floated on the surface of the water. There was greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains until the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. Every living thing that moved on the earth perished, birds, livestock, and wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over all the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in the nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Men and animals and creatures that move along the ground and the birds of the air were wiped out from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. The water flooded the earth for 150 days. So, punishment is full. God has sustained a seed bank for himself, made of the righteous Noah and his sons, who will prove to be less than righteous. At least some of them will. And it's all accomplished. We're not going to go much further, but I do want to read the next verse because it is a better place to stop on. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him on the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. The story, as I said, always ends in grace. No matter what the punishment is, no matter what calamity exists, God is always there watching over what he has created. He is always gracious to what he has created. There is simultaneously a call for righteousness and an extension of mercy. Like the story of Jesus and the woman who was caught in adultery. He says to the crowd, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." And to the woman, he says, "Go your way and sin no more." That's really what the story of Noah is about. The demand for righteousness, but hope for a future. We will continue this story, this account next time. Till then, thanks.